podcasting is currently being sold to brands like radio, like display advertising, like YouTube. It's all bundled in together.
Yeah.
Podcasting in the future, I believe, will develop on from that because it's the only medium that has got such a startlingly high action rate based on what I, as a host, tell you to do.
Hello and welcome to the new season of Marketed Not Live, the podcast for marketers who are looking to their own community to find out what's working now and, importantly, what's around the corner. In every episode, we'll bring to you a guest to talk about a specific marketing topic that will help you broaden your horizons. So if you're into social media, you can learn about all things SEO, branding, customer experience, and much, much more just by listening to your peers. We've got some great guests lined up, including speakers from this year's Marketed Live, which takes place on Monday the 30th of September 2019 at the magnificent Nottingham Contemporary. And it would be great if we had you there too, so make sure you check out marketed.live online and get your hands on one of the limited number of tickets left. Now, do you know what? We could not do this show without having a sponsor, and we're so proud to have Captivate.fm as our podcast sponsor of Marketed Not Live. Captivate is just a wonderful way to build audience engagement with your brand. Any kind of audio marketing is fantastic, but we're using this platform, Captivate.fm, and it's revolutionized the way that we distribute our content out towards anyone who chooses to subscribe to our podcast, for which I am eternally grateful. All you've got to do really to get hold of this is to go to Captivate.fm. It's the world's only growth-focused podcast opening company. It gives you analytics, the distribution center, all of that, and you can start using it today for £1 only. So just go to Captivate.fm. Right, well, today I'm joined by a podcasting pioneer. With over 600 episodes of his short-form podcast, The Podcast Accelerator, Mark helps people and businesses who want to improve their audio content and offer increasing value, but that is not all. Along with his team at Rebel Base Media, who are the UK podcast experts, and that's where we are today, he is leading the way in podcast innovation with products like Captivate, podcast websites, Podcast Success Academy, Podcast Design Studio. The list goes on, including productivity, which, by the way, I have to say is the most frustrating yet brilliant teaser campaign I've ever had to be involved in.
Thank you.
I don't know how I've been able to not get up that list, but there we go. That's another discussion, perhaps offline. He's a speaker. He's a massive Star Wars fan, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. And I've been so grateful for his support for Marketed Live since day one. He spoke at the first event. He's here to speak to you again. Mark Asquith, welcome to Marketed Not Live.
Well, thank you, mate. I appreciate that. Oh, yeah, I did speak at the first one, didn't I?
You did. Have you forgotten?
I've not forgotten. It's just you know, you do a lot of stuff.
Well,
you know, you
I
get
suppose.
around a little bit. We see each other a fair bit, 3 or 4 times a year. That's quite a lot for, you know, people that are generally on Instagram and the Twitter. I see you more than I see, like, I don't know, my mum or my sister.
Standard.
And yeah, exactly.
Real people.
That's good. Happy to help, man. It's good to be here. This is.
It's great to be here. Thank you so much for letting us record this in Rebel Base Media Studios here in Sheffield. It's what a fantastic setup you have.
Well, thank you. It's pretty cool. We kind of we dropped on lucky. I'll not lie to you. We did get a little bit lucky with this. So we're in Sheffield Tech Parks, as you know, because you were here. But we had just the normal studio. You know, we're essentially a tech company. And we knew that we wanted as Rebel-based media, which I'm sure we'll get into that in a little bit. Wanted to start to do a little bit of consulting, a little bit of strategy work, talk to agencies, do a little bit more in the UK because primarily we're in the US. And as the UK scene started to catch up and continues to at least try and catch up, we just late last year, late 2018, we just got a knock on the door from the guy that runs it, Tom. He said, we've got the same space that you were in, but it's got another glass partitioned office, which is ideal. Do you guys want it? We're like, we can make that into a studio. So it was it was really interesting because we soundproofed the entire place, decorated it out. We've still got a tiny little bit of work to do, but we set up some live streaming stuff. You guys listening can't hear this, but down there in the corner. And then I called Michelle Levitt, a friend of mine over at Heil, and just said, Michelle, if we co-brand this thing, do you mind sending us a pile of mics and we'll just shout about Heil? Because I think they're wonderful mics and all the gear, the boom arms, the headphones, everything. And sure enough, Michelle was like, yeah, of course I will. Yeah, she's like we are. She used to own a podcast studio, so she gets it. So we got all these wonderful mics, and then we've got this Rodecaster, which is a lot of fun. And yeah, this is it. It wasn't that hard to set up, as crazy as that sounds.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that I say that is that we can't serve everyone in the UK. So if people are looking at podcasting, like, you don't need that much really to get started. You know, you just need a decent mic, something to record into, and it can sound like this. You know, it's not like if you buy £100 mic, it's going to sound orders of magnitude worse. It's still going to sound pretty damn good. So yeah, that's that kind of a little backstory on the studio, but it's cool, isn't it? Thanks for coming.
It's very cool. It looks very pro. We'll put some pictures up somehow so you can see how cool we both look here. But it reminds me of when I used to do student radio. You know, it's got that vibe. It's got the sound. Obviously, you know, we're cooler than those kids at student radio.
I'm not sure about that, actually. I'm not sure. I don't know if we're cooler. They can probably pull clothes off that we can't.
Possibly. To be fair, you didn't hear my 6 of the best mix on a Friday night at 6:30.
Oh.
You know, it was pretty epic.
I'm sure it was.
I thought I was the Pete Tong of Hull University. I'm not sure what everyone else thought.
I'm sure they thought it was all going Pete Tong, mate.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure on that one, eh?
We did it. Yeah, so we knew we'd get the sound effect in there as well. Let me ask you a few questions about how you got into this stuff, right, in the first place. You know, how did you get into podcasting to begin with?
So I'm a huge Star Wars fan, but my other great pop cultural love is DC Comics. So Batman, Superman, The Flash, Green Arrow, Green Lantern, all those guys. Like, I'm a big DC guy. And I started there were 3 things that happened to get me into this. The first one was DC Comics relaunched their entire comic line in 2011. Some of it was great, some of it was terrible, but they relaunched it in 2011. So for a lapsed comic book reader, it was a really good place to jump back in. So I'd been wanting to get back into reading again for a while, and they reset a heck of a lot of stuff. I was like, well, this is a perfect time. And it was also the advent of digital comics being readily available. So that's kind of one thing that happened, which caused us to create a blog called 2 Shots to the Head, which was great. It's to paraphrase a quote from Batman Dark Victory. The quote is something like, 2 shots to the head couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. We got 2shotstothehead.com. And my friend and I, Gaz Ehlert, who now runs Spark Rebellion, the Star Wars show with me, we just started podcasting about DC and pop cultural stuff. So that was the first thing. Gaz said, you need to podcast. And I was like, dude, it's not 2005, and Lost is not on TV anymore. What the hell are we going to talk about? And he made me buy a blue snowball mic, which is behind you. It's the first ever mic I ever used, that little white ball. And it was terrible sound, awful. But we did a podcast. The second thing that happened was, I started wanting, because of this kind of love of DC and so on, I started to want to consume more DC content that wasn't reading the books and so on. The movies weren't doing too well back then. I think in 2013 we just had like Dark Knight Rises, Man of Steel, which I did love. So I dug into Kevin Smith, who's a really kind of big deal in DC, in pop culture, you know, obviously the actor, the writer, director, and started to dig into his Fat Man on Batman show, which I absolutely love, because he's like me, he gets way too emotional about all this. And so that was the second thing that happened. And then the third thing that happened was when I was running my digital agency. So I used to run a digital agency called Hacksaw. And we were in Barnsley, and we worked with some really high-profile clients and a lot of kind of grassroots clients as well. We had a real solid mix, everything from like doing Fortune magazine covers and working for Bosch, kind of down to working with your local plumber. In fact, I've just got a phone call from one of the old plasterers that we did a site for. His site's down. Obviously, it's nothing to do with us anymore. So I was like, sorry, Sean, can't help. But when I was running that agency, I was getting a little bit bored. I I need kind of stimulation through fulfillment. I'm an ideas guy. You know, like I'm terrible at executing everything, but I can take things so far. I can develop the ideas. I've got a bit of an intuition on, I think, what people want. And I was just, because we started this podcast for Two Shots to the Head, I thought to myself, you know, so many people, you're going to laugh at how naive this was. So many people ask me questions for business. I was on holiday in Tenerife. I was laid by the pool. I went 1,500 miles and ended up sat on a sun lounger next to someone that knows my granddad. Really weirdly.
Always the way.
Can't believe it. Does that know Reuben Asquith from Barnsley? That is my granddad, mate. Kidding, aren't you? I've come all this way. So I'm starting, laying on this sun lounger, and I thought to myself, a lot of people ask me questions. Like my accountant asked me questions. How do you do this stuff online? How do you do this in business? Then I'd have like friends saying, how are you doing not bad for yourself in Barnsley running an agency? So, small business advice. So I started my own personal brand, Excellence Expected, which this week I'm just getting rid of. I'm actually changing it over to markasquith.com and kind of telling a different story, which I'll maybe get to later. So I started this podcast, Excellence Expected, which was, get this, right? It's genius. No one's ever done it. I thought to myself, I'm going to interview business people. And I'm going to get tips off them. I'm going to learn. I'm going to build my network. No one's ever done this before. This is in 2013, 2014, and I was totally green on podcasting in terms of entrepreneurship. So I didn't know about JLD, I didn't know about Pat, I didn't know about Ducker, Ducker wasn't even doing it then, but I didn't know about any of those guys doing it. I just thought, I'm going to go kind of full bore into this. So I did 150 episodes of that, and then realised, oh crap, a lot of people are doing interview podcasts where they're dialing a guest and they're literally giving the same advice. It's not like this where it's a conversation, it's more just like creating entrepreneurial content just to say you've got a podcast or to build your network. And I was like, don't really want to do that. And then everything just escalated from there, because when I'd set that personal brand up, I was like, holy, this is really difficult. This is there's so many moving parts, and the climate now is so different. But 6 years ago, the amount of work that I had to do to figure out how to create a podcast, and technically all the bits, I was just very lucky that I was in a tech, I'm in the tech realm, and I understood it. So we put podcast websites together. Kieran and I walked in one morning with an idea, and I spoke to JLD from E01. Just gave him a call. I've been on his show. We jumped on a call. I just said, look, man, I've got this idea. If we test it, can we test it with your audience? We'll do a bit of a partnership on it, insofar as some kind of not a joint venture, but some kind of partnership where we just marry things up and we test it with your audience, and we'll create the product. If your audience says that they want an all-in-one web platform that's got podcast hosting and takes all the burden off people, if they want that, we will build it. So we did that. People wanted it. And that's what got me into podcast websites. But like me, my brain's always going. So during my research for podcast websites, I went out to the NAB show over in Las Vegas, where it was co-hosted with an old conference that's not there anymore called NMX, New Media Expo. And I did a lot of research, and I was kind of stealth researching, and I went in and I was a little bit under the radar. No one knew who I was, but now I'm sort of friends with a lot of the speakers. It's where I met Ducker for the first time. Friends with a lot of the companies that are exhibiting there. Some of them are competitors, and it's a very friendly industry. And just basically came back from Vegas, pulled the trigger on podcast websites, but also I've got the sketches for it. I had the idea for productivity. Mm-hmm. I had the seeds of the idea for Captivate. I had the inclination that the design studio could do something, and started forming the idea for the academy, all in the space of one trip.
That early on?
Yeah, this is all the stuff that we do now is not new to us. It's all stuff that we've been unable to execute because in fact, I'll go at this from a different perspective.
Is it the market that's too early for that? Or
well, two things actually. It depends on the product. So from a different perspective, you know what it's like when you split your focus. And even now, people say to us, how are you doing so many things? And I say, well, actually, we're not. We started life as podcast websites, knowing that eventually we'd want a group company to sit above that with all these other brands and companies alongside it. So that each brand, each business can seek investment or can be exited or can grow, can do well, can fail. And it won't affect the other stuff. So we always had this vision and this plan. And it's only in 2018 that we started executing it. So people do say to me, like, how are you doing so much stuff? And we're not. We're not doing so much stuff. We're doing one thing, which is to help podcasters grow. And it just so happens that we've got products that will help them at different stages throughout. The point about the market not being quite ready, that is the case for productivity. Had I brought productivity into the market 2015, 16, 17, even 18, it wouldn't have done anything. The industry has had to mature from the perspective of listeners coming in, from brands taking notice, and from VC money and angel money flowing through the space now like it is, with Luminary, 100 million, probably going to fail, sadly. Anchor getting acquired, Gimlet getting acquired. It's just made people sit up and take notice. So with productivity, which is an interaction platform, it was too early. The other stuff, we just had to get really good at podcast websites. But what we did inside of that, which not many people, well, I suppose the users know, but not many people know the story thereof, is that the components of the academy that we run, the Podcast Success Academy, which is essentially the tagline for that is teaching you the skills that no one told you needed to succeed as a podcaster. So SEO for podcasters, email marketing, digital skills, how to be a negotiator, how to be a planner, how to be get a sponsor contract, all that kind of stuff. Within the first version of Podcast Websites Dashboard, there was a little tab that said Academy, and we'd do webinars with experts on these different things. So we'd sown the seeds. And, of course, we had podcast hosting built in. We've been a podcast host from day one. Guess what? It just wasn't called Captivate. It was just all rolled into one product. So that's what's always interesting when people say, how can you do so much stuff? Like, we're not. All we've done is, if you think about, and this is a really interesting point of view for you as a listener, is that the core thing is trying to open up as much of the addressable market as possible. Podcast websites only deals with a very small portion of the podcasting market because it does one thing really, really well, which is managed WordPress for podcasters. We understand podcasting. We understand WordPress. We do it really bloody well. So to open up more of the addressable market, it was easily a case of saying, well, look, now's the time where we decouple the podcast hosting, we rebrand it Captivate, we plug it back into the podcast websites business. So if you're a podcast websites user, you get Captivate for free. But also we open up more of the addressable market. So people that are wanting to start a podcast, people who are just looking for traditional podcast hosting. And our version 1 of Captivate is traditional podcast hosting, albeit looks better than anyone else. It's quicker than everyone else. It's easier to use than anyone else. And then version 2 and version 3 of that will start to do things that no one else is doing. So all these pieces have been there.
It's just evolution, right?
Yeah, and we used to do design. So we got Podcast Design Studio. Well, guess what? We just stuck a brand on it. So we can open up people that might not want to use podcast websites, but who have seen the cover art that we've designed for someone who is using podcast websites and say, where did you get that from? Well, guess what? We can service those now. So yeah, that's kind of the background. That's how I got into it, and that's the journey up to today, really.
So that master plan that you've had all along is sort of coming to fruition, or certainly is more visible now, because I guess the market is ready for that to happen. And as you pointed out, podcasting's been around for a long time, but it does seem to me, and I guess I'm guilty of this, having created a podcast, that everyone's now got a podcast. You know, everyone's looking to do that. You also mentioned equipment and how great this is, and how maybe you don't need to start with that. But for people who are listening to this, who are thinking, right, well, you know, maybe I want to start a podcast, why should a person, or maybe a business in particular, look to start a podcast? What are the benefits to that? And how realistically is it easy to do?
So we'll talk through the lens of business then. So why would you start a podcast for a business, and how would you go about doing that insofar as, you know, creating something that's decent? Well, if you think about, like, what's the biggest thing that marketers tell you? It is people buy from people. It's the old adage that is like, it sounds great, but it's not that easy to do, is it? If you think about it, Google AdWords, tactic, Facebook marketing, tactic, social media, tactic, content marketing, tactic. But it's all mass, even though it's more personal than it has ever been. You're still creating mass content.
Yeah. And using technology to just get it out there.
Absolutely. And a podcast is no different. It's still content for the masses, but it's the only medium, even, I believe, trumping video in this, where you and me could now, instead of saying, hey guys, welcome to MarketEd Not Live, we can say, hey, you, welcome to MarketEd Not Live. And because I've got my headphones on, because I'm walking, because I'm running, because I'm at the gym, because I'm cooking, because I'm driving, you are talking to me. So even though it's distributed en masse, just like every other type of content, it's the only one that pipes directly into your brain.
I am so with you on that.
It's so true, isn't it?
It's so true. I mean, I would actually go as far as to say when you're doing things like Instagram stories or something like that, people aren't gathered around watching an Instagram story together, are they? So actually, you're just talking to one person. And I think if you do frame these things in that way, that is more intimate, isn't it?
Oh yeah, and it's people get to know your voice. I had someone at Podfest last month, whenever it was, just say, I listened to your podcast, I knew it was you, I heard you from around the corner, I knew it was you, I had to come and say hello. I was like, that's weird.
Were you the only Yorkshire person there?
Do you know I wasn't? There's a few of us now. A few years ago when I used to go to the States, it was like, oh, you're that British podcast guy. I'm like, yes, now there's 5 of us. And Ant McGinley's the one with the big red beard. That is not me, everyone. So it's a very personal medium, and for a brand and for a business, what you got to understand is that, like most marketing, is in fact, I'm going to go at this again from a slightly different perspective. Most small business marketing, so knowing your audiences, I know them. Small businesses, agencies, and they're not huge agencies. There may be a couple of million turnover tops, and then maybe some businesses that are higher than that, but who are not as advanced in marketing as the agencies are. So we all don't have the budget to be content marketers. We all don't have the time to be content marketers because it's hard. You've got amazing people making a living from it like Andrew and Pete and teaching people how to do it, but let's be really clear, that is their full-time job. And you kind of sold this dream of content marketing being this complete panacea. It will just work for everyone because it's easy. Well, guess what? No, it's not. It's not easy. But in the UK in particular, podcasting is still really nascent. There's not that much going on. But in particular, there's not that much going on that is entertaining. All right. Now, everyone says in podcasting, well, what does your business podcast do? It adds value. Well, of course it adds value. That's like a plumber turning up to my house and saying, I do plumbing.
Right.
Well, of course you do, mate. It says plumber on your van.
Yeah.
You have to do, by virtue of saying that and doing that, you have to be able to do that. So that's not a unique selling point. And the only thing that makes us buy anything is when we feel like we want to buy it. Or necessity. Tyre goes. Crap, I need a tyre.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't need a new car. I just want that new car. So you get emotion playing in, and you get everything else playing into it, all that desire, that need that's driven by emotion. And this is the only medium where you can tell stories that generate actual emotion. If you're a marketer, if you're an accountant, you do not start an accountancy podcast. It's boring as hell. Well, no one wants to listen to it.
Well, I don't know. Making Tax Digital is quite interesting.
We need to stop talking.
Hang on.
I can't believe you even remembered that. That is on. It's on a fade out. That one
is
as well.
it?
Yeah,
Oh,
Paul
okay.
thinks it. So if you're listening, Paul thinks when you press the button again, it stops it. It doesn't restart it.
This is the never-ending crap joke.
The never-ending ladies. I love that. Right, we'll fade it.
Okay, please do.
Mate, that's genius. Anyway, no, most business podcasts, they have to add value, but they don't necessarily entertain. They don't make you feel anything that you want to feel. They don't make you think, holy crap, I want to do something with this. And the only way to do that is to educate, give people quick wins, give people these profound realizations, actually tactically teach them something, or tell them stories that make them laugh. We've just done that for a reason. It's because we wanted to add levity to the show. We wanted to add a bit of banter to the show. We wanted to show that actually this is as entertaining as it is valuable. Now,
God,
valuable,
I hope so.
It is, probably. Sorry if you're listening. It's really not. But the point is that you can add value all day long. You could read blog posts. Your podcast could curate blog posts across the world, and you credit all the authors and you just read the blog post. That is boring as crap. If you create content that makes people feel something, then you're onto a winner. So storytelling, education. Now, as a business, you can really desperately leverage that by marketing through your topic. And when I say through, I don't mean marketing through your topic, as in using your topic to market. I mean forgetting your bloody topic and going right to the outcome that someone wants. So, I sell cycling parts. I don't care whether there's a podcast about cycling parts. I genuinely do not care. But if I get into cycling, And there's a podcast that is teaching me all the best routes in the UK. It's telling me where to watch out for the drops, where to watch out for the hills, the pitfalls, what tyres to have on, what to do if my gear system fails, if my chain breaks, whatever. And it just happens to be brought to you by Evans Cycles. Not endorsing. But what am I going to do? It puts me top of mind. So it's back to that old marketing cliche, attention, interest, desire, action. You're building attention and interest, and you are setting a default of desire by just being useful and entertaining. Now, if you add into that mix that you might have someone that's quite kind of straight-laced, and then you've got someone that's a little bit kind of nuts doing that same podcast, it's entertaining. You make it fun. And then, top of mind is the people who have commissioned that content. If you're an accountant, I said, and this is, for me, this is how you do podcasting for business. My accountant, if he said to me, what should we do to start a podcast? I'd be like, do you know what? Accountants is dull. No one wants an accountant. They just got to have one. No one wants it. So you're on an uphill battle all the time. You're fighting on price. You're fighting on commoditized services. You're fighting on things that can be replaced easily by other people. The only thing that's different about you is you. There's nothing different about John Smith Accountancy and Louise Smith Accountancy apart from John and Louise. They're different people. They've got different ideas. But importantly, they've got different sense of humor. They've got different stories to tell. And, if you can embrace that kind of storytelling mentality, and if you can start to create content, like I said, for your accountancy firm or for your agency, which is not just, here's how to do this. Here's how to file your tax return. It's like, no, here's Ian. Ian, what is going on, mate? Yeah, sorry about that, dude. So my dog ate the accounts, and just take these receipts off me. You're not going to believe why they look like that, but my van got stolen. These were the only things that I got back because I knew that I needed them. That you tell a story, you bring people in, and you start to entertain people. Oh, by the way, this podcast is brought to you by John Smith Accountancy. Just give us a shout if you need anything. Get your free tax guide online.
It's kind of there.
It's just easy.
Yeah.
But the really cool thing with that is that people share stories. They don't share. They do that really valuable podcast unless they are looking for it.
Yeah.
Unless they are looking for something and they're in that mindset of learning, only then will they share the education. But if you say, oh my God, they do that accounting podcast from up the road, that local accountant's done a podcast, and they got, that builder that always drives around with that bright orange van, yeah. Turns out that van got nicked and his receipts were the only thing he got back. Can you believe that? And somehow his dog got out of the van and managed to find his way home as well. Mental, you should listen to it. That's more compelling than, did you hear John from John Smith's Accountancy telling us how to file his tax returns? He's only up the road. Do you want to go work with him? It's not happening,
So just want to pick up on that then, because one of the questions that I have, which I'm sure people who are thinking about having a podcast would think about, is structure. If you go on a blog writing course, they will typically talk to you about, what you need to do for SEO and putting the answer in the first paragraph and putting your call to action at the bottom, and it's very structured. We're not talking about that here. We're talking about, like say, storytelling. So are we thinking about 3-act structures and stuff like that, or is screenwriting type of style? Is that the thing that we need to be doing? Yeah,
I think if you really super simple hero's journey, set up conflict resolution. If you think about that always works. It's essentially every movie that you've ever watched. But it depends how you want to approach this. Now, think about from two different contexts: radio and TV.
Yeah,
and I'm talking entertainment radio and entertainment TV. They're very different. So you've actually got two types. You've got storytelling stuff, The Archers on radio. That's for the oldies. And you've got any TV show or movie. That's entertainment stuff. But then you've got news and you've got infotainment, which is like Good Morning Britain, Good Morning America.
Right.
Or you've got Going Live when you were a kid.
Remember that? I love that.
Bloody Philip Schofield legend. And you've got two different types, and they're serving different purposes. One of them is there to entertain. The other one is there to deliver something via entertainment. So there's two distinctions there with that one. The point is that you can craft this audio however the heck you want to craft it. If you want to go down a 3-act route, go for it. That's going to work. If you want to go more radio, so like I'll give you 2 examples of our podcasts that then segment it. So you can tell stories, which Aaron Mankey at Law does this wonderfully well. Business Wars does it from Wondery. Any of the kind of big original podcasts, like the Wolverine podcast over on Audible, all that kind of stuff, they're telling stories. But for a business owner, it's even easier, because that takes a lot of resources. It's even easier to do something a little bit more segmented. So what we do with our shows, we've got 2, we run a number of podcasts, but one of them's called Captivate, which is the definitive guide to becoming an audio influencer, which teaches podcasters about the podcasting industry, basically. And then we've got a Star Wars show, Spark of Rebellion. And both of those follow a very similar format. So we've got segments. On the Captivate show, we've got these following segments. We've got podcasting mass debates. Yeah.
Got it.
We've got stupid shit in podcasting. Might remember to mark this one as explicit. We've got stupid shit in podcasting. The flattering ram. And then someone else. Yeah. So these are your face now is like, what is going on with these?
But you've got structure in there, so people know. I guess people who come back to listen again and again, they're used to it, but they look forward to each of the segments.
They do, absolutely. But importantly, so I'll park that one for a second, and I'll come back to it. And then the second show, Star Wars, the Spark of Rebellion podcast, has just literally got Star Wars news and reviews, and/or our top 3 favorite characters, music, whatever. Then it's got something else, another segment, which is pretty much... that one's a review. The first one is Star Wars news. The next segment is reviews. And then the last one is the random spotlight, where we'll pick a character or a vehicle or a weapon or something from Star Wars, and we'll just focus in on it for 10 minutes. 2 both segmented shows, but 2 different audiences. Star Wars people, you stick a Star Wars looking picture on Instagram and the Star Wars people are stopping to look. So the goal of that show is not to put the segments at the front, but to put the content of the segments at the front. So we will always market with that podcast. We are talking about Anakin Skywalker and a little bit on the promo image. Oh, and this is the random spotlight. And then it might be Master and Apprentice, the new Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi book. And that'll be the main focus of any promo images that we do for that segment in that episode. And at the top, it might be, this is the reviews section. Flip that around for Captivate. The content is not the sales point here. Instead, it's because we've named those segments in such a way that make your face do what your face just did, which is, did he really just say podcasting mass debates? Well, yes, we did. We're going to have a mass debate about something in podcasting. And then we're going to call Luminary stupid shit in podcasting. And then this week on Captivate, the flattering ram, we're going to pick Paul Ince's glasses because look how damn cool they look. So
standard.
Of course they do. And if you see that on a feed, Luminary, stupid shit, you're like, what? Who's saying that? Because it's a different audience. It has to stand out in a different crowd. With you, guess who's getting tagged? Like, what is Mark talking about my glasses for? I better listen to that. And then back to the guy who left his receipts in the van. You tell your friends, I can't believe, Mark and Jess said my glasses were nice on their podcast. What are you talking about? Yeah, look, it's here. So as a business, it can be quite easy to come up with these shareable segments. Look at what radio does. Drive time, the news on the hour, the weather, flirt divert from the old Radio 1 days. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
777459875. Yeah, use that one a
Someone's
number of times.
used it, yeah.
Yeah, big time. It has been used on me, I can assure you. I did go out once and ask for a girl's number. She went, it's 777459875. And I'm like, that's flirt divert. Let's not play those games.
Oh, how awkward.
Yeah, I avoided it. And so that was good. But that number stuck in my head because it was a marketable segment. How long ago was that? 15 years?
Yeah.
Scott
easily.
Mills, 15 years. It's a marketable segment. So applying that logic to your business podcast is easy. So let's take, you create another marketing podcast. It's called Marketing Alive. You're welcome. It's a free one. And
go check it out.
Go check it out. You might just
hit that subscribe button.
Rate and review.
Yeah.
You might create some segments. So this show's a really good conversational show, or in this instance, a monologue show from me just yapping at you. But with the other show, you might do something more structured. So you might say, do you know what? Here is segment number 1, which is this week in marketing. What has happened? Really simple stuff. Then you might have the tool of the week. which is named like that
Hello.
on purpose. Hello, here we are. And it might be, okay, Agora Pulse, Meet Edgar, Aweber, whatever, whatever. That it's the tool of the week and it's something in there. And then it might be something like this week's worst marketing advice. I saw this tweet online and it said that all you've got to do to build your Instagram following is follow and unfollow people. Now that, for any business, is easily replicated. An accountant can do that. This week's worst accountancy advice was, some guy said that he could put through his new dentures as tax deductible. Guess what? You can't. So you kind of, it's really easy to replicate that kind of thing. And then all you do is speak in the language of your audience. So if your audience is always talking about, let's say that you're an accountant, you specialize in builders, and the builders are always talking about last minute stuff. Like, I can never get my accounts to you on time. I'm always late. You know what I mean? It might be, and you might have a segment at the end of that, which is something like something around building, saving time for builders. So you're not talking to accountancy directly, but what you're saying is, did you know if you use Xero, here's an affiliate link, you can scan your receipts and you won't have to be late again. Also, life hack for you builders, go to McDonald's at 6:30 in the morning. I know this because my dad does it, instead of 7:15. And the traffic will be nothing versus really busy at 7:15. So I know you're not selling your subject. You're giving them things that will be useful to them, and it's all, you can easily segment stuff out like that.
And their, I guess, emotional response to that sort of level of information, even if it feels fairly obvious, is what, you're on my side. You're thinking about me. You know exactly what it's like. I totally get it, mate, and all that kind of stuff.
That's it.
That's the connection that they're making.
Yeah, and they become the expert. They become the expert. Because remember, the goal with business podcasting is only one of two things. It's either awareness or to sell something. And then beneath that, you've only got two routes to do that. You either choose to be the expert or you choose to be the connector. So if people do interview shows like I used to, I did 150 interviews. I built my network because I didn't have a US network 5 years ago. Now my US network is as big, if not bigger, than my UK network. And ranges from Chris Brogan and Guy Kawasaki and JLD, who are all been on the show and friends of mine, kind of down to the person that has just started up their own consultancy and is really struggling. The person that no one else would know. So to be the connector is to put your content and other people at the front of your show, and that's great for brand because people know you. Same thing as when you run an event, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is to be the expert. That's when solo shows are really good because you put yourself at the center. That's why my podcast, the Podcast Accelerator, is me talking about this because I don't want to put anyone else on the pedestal. It's me giving my opinion. And you know what I'm like? I'm pretty outspoken in certain areas. Yeah, I'll say it legit. Yeah. Hard to tell. I understand. But, you got to decide, do you want to be a connector and build a network, or do you want to be the expert? And then, is your podcast marketing? Is it brand awareness marketing? Or is it marketing? Is it sales marketing? So they're the things that you kind of got to decide. What's the goal of this thing? And the last thing that I will say after I finish monologuing is it's not a short-term thing. Like any storytelling medium, any entertainment medium, any long-term value medium, the success comes from consistency. It comes from people spreading the word about episode 1 that you'd recorded 2 years ago, that you forgot you recorded 2 years ago, but 2 years later changed someone's life because that one nugget of information helped them out of a hole. And they tell everyone about that, So it's a consistency game. It's not we'll do it for 6 months. It's not we'll try it. If you want to try it and you want to wrap it up, that's all right. But don't say the thing didn't work.
So how long should you be looking to try it? I mean, you've said 6 months there. Is that's the minimum? And is that 6 month weekly episodes? Is it 3 episodes a week? Is it 5 days a week? I mean, you've kind of done all of these things. What's kind of worked the best for you?
Longer form content, weekly works best.
And what length is longer form content?
25 and up.
Okay.
Maybe 20 and up. Ish. That sounds really like that's not much in it. But more frequent for me personally has worked better in terms of brand, doing short form stuff, 20 minutes and less. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days a week. I wouldn't urge anyone to do a daily show or 5 days a week. I do 3 days a week for my Accelerator show. I do weekly for Spark Rebellion, weekly for Captivate, weekly for Founders Fireside. I did twice weekly for my interview show. I've done daily. I've done five daily, Monday through Friday. Work daily.
Depends on your working model.
It does, doesn't it, actually? Boom. This is why we are modern. Digital nomads, hashtag.
Yeah. Working on the train on the way up here.
Whew, with that dodgy internet connection you get on the train.
I did it all offline, mate.
So frustrating. So once a week, I would say would be a good starter. And I would do once a week. And I wouldn't change the model just because you get bored of it. How many Bon Jovi songs do you know? What's your number? I can probably name the number one that you know. Go on.
What, the number one?
The one that you know, the one that you most associate with.
Living on a Prayer is like number one, right?
What's the other one?
Always.
I knew it was going to be Always, actually.
Did you?
1994, filmed on Niagara Falls.
Why do you think I would choose Always?
Because it was the only one that topped that got into the charts in the UK. And it came out after their main body of Volume 1 work, and it came out released on Crossroad in 94. And they released it, a radio edit, and it got big. And it also had a really decent video back in the day.
Important.
And it kind of started Volume 2 of their work off, in my opinion. But anyway, the reason I asked that is I've seen Bon Jovi like 15 times. And you can see that they hate singing Living on a Prayer. They hate it because they've hammered it. But guess what? To that 15-year-old kid that's never been to a Jovi gig and whose dad has dragged him along, that's the first time.
Yeah, that's the one you want.
Exactly.
That's when you sing at a wedding.
Exactly. And here's the thing. That's the same with your podcast. The format of it, the structure of it, the content of it persist way beyond your boredom threshold, because you will get bored. It will become a little bit tedious. Persist past that and persist past the next version of that and the next version, and then you'll get traction. So it's not a how long, it's a how adoptive your audience are of it. So when you create your content, tell everyone you know, and then keep doing the same thing. Same format, same structure, give people things to rely on.
How do you know whether something's working then? So let's compare it to something like YouTube, where if you've got a YouTube channel, you can go and look at your audience retention videos and see when people drop off and like, well, I said something that was dead boring there and everyone left. Can you do that on a podcast? How do you work this stuff out?
To a degree. You can do it in proprietary listening apps. So something like Captivate will have its own app. Productivity, kind of Apple's ecosystem, you can do a little bit of that with their Podcast Connect. Spotify will have the data, they're just not sharing it. And a few other proprietary apps. But bottom line is there's no standardized way across the industry. And in my view, there probably never will be. But that's not a bad thing. The way of course, for brands and so on, and it's something that we're working on with Productivity, is actually working on a slightly different form of measurement and engagement with brands, because that's what they're going to want. Because brands buy sponsorships like they've bought everything else for the duration of their lifespan. They buy it based on the numbers. So podcasting is currently being sold to brands like radio, like display advertising, like YouTube. It's all bundled in together. Yeah. Podcasting in the future, I believe, will develop on from that, because it's the only medium that has got such a startlingly high action rate based on what I, as a host, tell you to do. And that's bringing that right back full circle to what we talked about right at the beginning, which is it's you and me.
And trust.
And we're connecting, and you trust me. How many people do I get asking me what email marketing platform I use because they hear my podcast? They know.
Yeah.
And when it comes to measuring engagement, honestly, because of that level of trust, because of that level of intimacy, the best way to do it right now is to ask, what do you do? What's your behavior? Which bit do you like? Do you like this bit? Email
Ask
me.
on your podcast,
Yeah.
you mean?
You
and
literally
then get them to feedback.
Get them
somehow.
to email or tweet you or whatever.
Okay.
I do it all the time.
Which is like radio, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's like other media, call in 0181 8118 055 or whatever it was on Going Live.
But what does it do? I forgot about that. What does it do? It builds then your super fans. It builds your advocates that are going to come out of the
Your
woodwork.
community.
Yeah. But not only the community, but the leaders of that community. That layer beneath you who love what you do as much as you do and want to tell everyone about it builds your advocates. and your true stark raving fans. That's what that builds. I do it all the time. You know, if Kieran's been a bit of a tool where I'm recording in here, I'll be like, and everyone send Kieran at Rebel Base Media. Send him an email with the word trombone in the headline. Then a day later when it's published, he's like, where am I getting all these emails with a trombone in the subject? I'm like, I don't know, man, that's weird. I've done that a few times, just to, because it's fun. But yeah, and I'm not naive enough to think that won't change. I think the ecosystem of podcasting has to as brands come into the space and they do see it as a marketing channel, which really annoys a lot of the podcasters because it's this open community, independent. We don't want your money. We don't want your brands. I get that, and I'm part of that with my Spark Rebellion show. But the business person in me, the marketer in me, the technologist in me knows that has to change over the next 5 to 10 years, and it will change. I just don't know how it will change yet.
But I guess you're at the forefront of that, though. So the things that you're doing with productivity and Captivate and all the rest of it. Let's look a little bit ahead then, if you can. Someone who's thinking of starting now and they're thinking, well, you know, is it too late? And you know, everyone's got a podcast, and you know, maybe I'll create one, and I've got my equipment, and I've got an idea, I've structured it all the things that you've said. Where's it going?
So again, through the lens of small business. In particular in the UK, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
No one's doing it. I get consultants that are quote-unquote personal brands coming into me. I get so many people. I had one in last week who was like, yeah, I want to start a podcast. Got my personal brand sorted, know everything about it, been speaking on stages for a long, long time. I'm like, right, okay, that's brilliant. Well, what about your podcast? And he's like, well, I'm going to do an interview show. I'm going to interview entrepreneurs. It's going to be brilliant. I'm like, no, it's not. It's going to be shit. And the reason it's going to be crap is because it's been done 1,000 times. And it's not been done in such a way that is adding value and entertainment. It's just, let's be honest, Mr. Consultant person, it's there for you to sell your stuff. It ain't going to happen. And I guarantee that you'll get bored of it after 6 months because it's quite a bit of work. So, looking ahead for businesses, they've got to consider this as something that they commission. That's not to say that they can't fulfill it themselves, get a couple of microphones, get sat in a meeting room, but treat it as something that they're commissioning. You know, like you get your builders, don't you, sponsoring golf holes and sponsoring like the TV, the football shirts of local school kids' football teams. Think of it like that. You have paid and commissioned something, you know, and then work on it like that. Look at it as an outside entity and say, do you know what? Without looking at my business, what does my audience want that my business could potentially sponsor? That's the future of business podcasting in the UK from my perspective, which is talking to your ideal audience about things that aren't about you. That's the future of it. In terms of tech, in terms of I guess the things that people will need, you know, we always create products, and my eye is always on what do independents need. So Captivate version 2 and 3, the features that we'll be introducing there will be much more related to brand. What does this podcast do for my brand? What does it do for my business? How tangible is all this stuff? Productivity is in the interaction space, which again ties into some of that stuff. But it's very important to know what you want from this. And if all you do is go, ROI, I just want ROI. Yeah, but what does that actually mean? Is it the number of conversations people have about you? How are you going to measure it? Is it the number of responses that you get? Is it the number of downloads on your thing that you get? But ultimately, moving forward, the future of podcasting for business in the UK is wholly storytelling and telling stories that evoke emotion and that will entertain and, of course, add value, but where you are not the primary focus. That's what I think the future is for the business podcasting space in the UK.
Very insightful. Let me just tell you that.
Thank you.
I always listen to you, Mark, and I will always take your advice, particularly about things like this, because it may appear as though I know what I'm doing on this show, but there is definitely elements where I don't. So
you do.
I'm channeling that student radio guy.
Oh, well, it's good. It's working for you.
Well, I'm a little bit grayer than maybe what I used to be. No taller, sadly.
Are you kidding? Oh, you stood up.
I am. Old joke.
It is. I forgot to turn the sound up.
It's all right. We can edit that out. That's the beauty of it, isn't it?
Why don't edit it out, do we?
Well,
do we edit? Are you an editor? I don't edit stuff.
I don't say that many likes, so maybe not. But I have edited out people who have said certain things.
Yeah, no, I understand that one actually. Yeah. Well, luckily, a little insight. You are going to get 3 different tracks off this. I think you'll get the multi-track as well.
Wicked.
Yeah, interesting.
It is very good. In light of what you said about structure, I'm very conscious that I don't particularly have that much of a structure to this conversation, so I've just made one up in my head as you've been talking. Not that you weren't interesting, but I've come up with some quick questions that I'm going to ask you, and I want you to kind of like fire off.
Quick fire. I
wasn't going to use that phrase. That's like,
it's a bit hospital radio,
isn't it? Really?
I like that. Welcome to the quick fire round.
Can I just tell you that when I was doing hospital radio, and I was very young, I was like 15, 16 at the time, they had one rule which was basically don't mention death.
Oh.
Because, in a hospital, it's, a thing.
There's a lot of it.
And it was a cottage hospital. It wasn't a big one. So it's full of relatively elderly people. And I accidentally played Spirit in the Sky.
Oh, wow.
I know. I didn't realise until about halfway through the song. I was sort of capturing the lyrics and thinking,
wow.
Fade out.
That is genius, dude. Oh, did you get told off?
I'm not sure anyone was listening, if I'm being honest.
And that is called audience engagement.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, so cheesy quick fire round. Right. In your opinion, give me someone in marketing, because this is a marketing-based show. Give me someone in marketing that's really like killing it right now. It's really doing well, really out there.
In podcasting?
Anything
or
to
just
do with
generally?
marketing. Yeah.
Do you know what? Teresa Heathwaring. She's doing great work.
Love her.
Yeah, me too. She does some work with us here. And the reason I brought her to mind was just because she's so straight talking, but strategic. And she's one of those kind of, even though she's been doing it such a long time and is great at it, she's one of those online rising stars. I think the next 4 years for her are really bright. So yeah, Teresa.
No question. I'm so pleased that she's going to be speaking at this year's MarketEd Live.
I knew that.
Yeah, of course she did.
Of course I did.
She's been helping us as well, actually, in putting together things like our landing pages. She's going to be talking about sales funnels on the day. And, she's got such a lovely way about it. Like when she gives feedback, she's like, can I give you the honest feedback? Which obviously means something's really shit and needs to change. I'm like, just, totally give it me warts and all. And, floodgates open, which is great because at least then it's practical and we can make a change. Okay, so Teresa Heathwaring, best bit of tech that you're using at the moment?
This Rodecaster Pro, this the thing that we're recording into is brilliant.
Pretty special. Best podcast you're listening to?
Oh, best podcast. It's my own Star Wars show, isn't it?
Yeah.
But no, I shouldn't mention that one. Still probably, at the minute, Business Wars. The storytelling aspect of Business Wars, like Burger King versus McDonald's, Netflix and Blockbuster, Sony and Xbox, Sony and Nintendo. Business Wars is really great. Just there's a lot of ads. Wondery, and we've talked about this in person over drink. Cut the ads down in Business Wars, please.
Okay. Talking of ads, what's a great ad that you've seen? TV, radio, whatever.
Well, do you know what, actually? I hate it. But it's that Yopa or whatever it's called ad. That one with the whip where he's selling his house and he comes out and he's whipping, gets the newspaper with the whip and whips his way downstairs to get his cereal out with like an Indiana Jones.
Why do you hate it?
It's just crap, but it's really effective.
Because what? It's memorable.
Yeah.
But I suppose you mentioned it, so
it's just annoying. It's the old go compare. Like, will we be that annoying that we remember it? So, yeah, fair play on that one.
Because they brought the Go Compare guy back, didn't they?
Yeah.
Because it was so annoying.
God. Anyway, but yeah, that one. I think it's Yopa. I hate the advert, but it's got me aware of their brand.
Yeah, it's got you talking about it.
There's 2 more campaigns, actually, ad campaigns, marketing campaigns. There's TP, which is a London renting company, which is all over the underground, which is a really great campaign. And the best marketing campaign that I've seen for a long time is the No Room for Racism Premier League campaign, which in terms of visual style and its messaging is absolutely wonderfully executed. So that's a really good ad campaign, just to kind of add an honourable mention.
Well, I don't know that one, so I'm going to go and look it up. All right, so at the risk of being a bit salesy, which is not the thing to do, clearly, but I wondered whether, as someone who's been to MarketEd Live, you would be able to try and articulate, maybe for those people still thinking about it. I mean, I don't know what they're waiting for, to be perfectly honest, but for those people still considering it, in your experience having been there, why should somebody come and see us?
Well, I think there's a new wave, this kind of conference 2.0 in the UK.
I like that.
Conference 2.0, which is...
Can I use that?
Of course you can.
Oh, great.
I think it's like this whole kind of phase 2 or the next phase of marketing conferences. You've got so many popping up. You've got so many going on. To me, MarketEd Live is what kicked that off when it had such a fresh approach. It was very, very chilled out. We were looking for Axor to work on the branding for it, and we approached it with that personality in mind. And I think here's the thing, you've only got budget to attend certain conferences in the UK, and you've got to pick them wisely. So if you want to go to a conference that is not going to deliver anything back, that you're not going to make good connections at, then go to other conferences. MarketEd Live has just got a very good mix of actionable stuff and the storytelling that we talked about, which is so important. And it's almost a no-brainer to try and just force your way into that conference. And also, honestly, sponsor it, speak at it, be involved in it in some way as a brand as well. So you got to be there. It's the first. It was the first of this next wave. So that's why.
Cool. Thank you so much. And thanks for spending time, for making the journey from your desk to the studio.
I know, what is it, like 5 yards?
Yeah, if that. But I do appreciate the effort.
You're welcome.
Time is a thing that you can't get back, so I appreciate that even more. Look, where should people get in touch with you? What do you want them to do to carry on that conversation with you?
Just hit me up on Twitter at Mr. Asquith. And if you actually will do a MarketEd Live job, so if you go to captivate.fm, you'll get your first month of podcast hosting for a quid, pretty much. So just go and check that out if you want to start a podcast. We've got all the tools and resources and education there as well. But just for me, at Mr. Asquith on all the socials.
Do it, folks. Thanks so much, Mark.
Pleasure.
Well, that's all for this episode of MarketEd Not Live. If you've enjoyed today's show, please leave us a review on the podcast platform of your choice and help spread the word about this and about MarketEd Live 2019 on the 30th of September. Remember, our event brings together experts from all marketing disciplines, so if marketing is your thing, we need to see you there. Visit marketed.live for all the info on speakers, travel options, accommodation, and read the blogs from your fellow attendees and speakers. We'll see you next time.